Everyone, I am back. Yes, I am back for my updated video that I told everybody that I will be doing today, and I will be doing a classic movie as well. But there are some things that should be noted as far as changes are concerned to my channel that I wanted to get out of the way, and that is why I'm making this video. Now, for the most part, the lineup that I had for all of my videos is pretty much the same, except on Thursdays it's going to be a video on what I would have done, and basically what I will do in this video is I'll talk about a particular film or book that I feel like could have been changed for the better. And I'll explain certain things that I would have changed in order to make it maybe somewhat better in my eyes. And that's not to say that the book or movie that I'll pick is something that's completely horrible. No, not necessarily. But I do think that anything can be improved upon, and everybody has their own opinion as to how they would improve upon something. So I figured that would have been a more interesting discussion to have than just review a movie. So instead, on Thursdays I will be having a video where I just talk about what I would have done, and it'll be based upon a movie or a book. More likely a movie, because I think movies are kind of easier to pick into and find problems and fix them, or fix them in a way that I would have fixed them. So that's basically how it's going to work out for the most part, and everything else is pretty much going to stay the same, except instead of doing an underrated film on Saturdays, I'm just going to do a regular film. So that will be another change, but for the most part everything's going to be the same. Today I'll be reviewing a classic movie, then I'll talk about music on Tuesdays, books on Wednesday, what I would have done on Thursday. Friday will be Disney. I'll still be doing the Disney original versus Disney works, and on Saturday it'll just be a regular movie, and then on Sunday it'll be just something completely random. So for the most part, not a lot is really changing. I think I like to keep it the way that I have it for now, at least. As far as everything else goes, just to give you a heads up of basically what books I'm going to be looking into, I just started reading The Reader today, and I'm going to have it finished by this coming Wednesday. So I'll be reviewing that, followed by Atonement, Revolutionary Road, and then The Lady of the Rivers. So for the most part, it should be an interesting 4 weeks. I start school, I believe, on the 21st again, so I will have a good chunk of time to look into as much as I can as far as books and movies and all of those things are concerned. And for the most part, not a whole lot is ultimately changing. Now, you might have noticed that there are ads now on my videos, all of my previous videos that I've made, and that is because recently YouTube decided to partner with me. So there are going to be ads, and you can always skip them. They're like these little ads that just pop up, and you could just close them, or you can always skip the ads if you don't want to watch them. So far I haven't generated any money from it, but what I intended to do originally, if I was to become, and this was my initial plan, if I were to become a YouTube partner, I would donate the money that I would generate to charity. And I was thinking it could be a charity of people who watch my videos' choice. If they have any suggestions on what kind of charity they would like me to donate to, I'd be more than happy to donate to charity, but so far I haven't generated any money from having any of these ads on. But if I do, I would be more than happy to donate it to charity, and I would be more than happy to accept any ideas of what kind of charity anybody is willing to throw out there. So for the most part, that's the only reason I decided it would be nice to just have the ads and have a chance to maybe make something and donate it to charity. But if I don't make anything out of it, then I don't make anything out of it. But either way, it's still nice to I think give back, especially during this time of year, especially during the holidays. For the most part, I think that's really all I can address that's not really been already addressed for the most part. I think it's really going to be a lot of the same format, but there's going to be a lot of interesting things to come. I really think that this will be really interesting to do, the new video that I've decided to do instead of just a regular movie on Thursdays. I think really looking into some thing that's already been made and seeing how I would change it, I think that would be interesting to do. And a particular person who watches my videos asked me if I could look and briefly discuss The Hobbit, which just came out recently. And I saw it a couple of days ago, and from what I gathered, it's a pretty decent adaptation, I think, to the book. I think it follows the book's main premise for the most part. There's just a lot of stuff that's added in because, again, The Hobbit's book is only like 300 pages. So, obviously Peter Jackson's going to put some stuff in there that's not in the book at all, or is like in the appendices. And the appendices are basically contain a lot of stuff that actually his son ended up writing, J.R. Tolkien's son. So, really, it's, for the most part, the movie, I think if you really like Lord of the Rings, you will like The Hobbit just as much. I think, for the most part, I did enjoy myself. I mean, it did go on for a little bit long, but I didn't feel bored watching it. I felt fairly entertained throughout the entire thing, even though you're wondering when it's going to end. You know, when you're entertained by something, but you kind of wonder, well, how's this going to end? And again, this is going to be broken up into 3 movies, kind of like how Lord of the Rings broke up into 3 movies. And for the most part, a lot of what was happening in The Hobbit really reminded me of the first movie. Because it seemed like the first movie, they did take a lot of detours. And it's kind of the same thing here, where there is all these different little mini adventures that they go on. So really, for the most part, what you're getting out of The Hobbit is pretty much a similar take of what you're getting from the first Lord of the Rings movie. I mean, I really felt that way, especially with a lot of the situations that they ended up in. For example, there's this one scene where they're trying to climb a mountain, like in the first movie, in the first Lord of the Rings movie, except instead it's like these giant rock giants, and they end up like throwing rocks everywhere and causing mayhem. And it's sort of similar to the first Lord of the Rings movie, where you see Saruman trying to, control the weather, and like create lightning so that, rocks and snow and ice will fall. It really had that similar effect. And it does feel a lot like the first movie, in the fact that it is to be continued. I think they tried to make the movie a little bit darker because, people who want to go see a movie, especially a Lord of the Rings based movie, would rather want to see it a little bit in a little bit more of an edgier light, because Lord of the Rings was just kind of more edgy and dark. And you do get that in this movie. But the book is a little bit more lighthearted in the sense that it's more for kids. So just kind of go in with that distinction that Peter Jackson's trying to make it more like Lord of the Rings, and not really make it stand out, I think, so much on its own, as this is much a continuation of the story. And I think if you can go in not with so much high expectations, thinking that it's just somehow going to topple Lord of the Rings, then you'll be fine. If you are going to go in with really high expectations, you're probably not going to be completely satisfied with the movie, because it kind of just takes a similar route as to the Lord of the Rings franchise. And it doesn't really ultimately, I think, stand out on its own so much. But I think it does do a good job of sort of delivering the story, getting us back into Middle-earth, getting us back into the whole world and the whole scope of it. That is fairly interesting, and I found it to be really well done, and you do get the pretty landscape again. And are the characters maybe as memorable? Not necessarily. There are some dwarves that stand out, because again, this movie is more revolved around dwarves. So yeah, you will get some that maybe stand out a little bit more, have maybe a little bit more lines than the others, but a lot of the characters don't really stand out as much, except Bilbo and Gandalf and probably the dwarf leader, because again, this is a fairly hoppity kind of film, because you're going from one adventure that they're having to another. It's more plot driven than character driven for the most part. Don't expect this to be very character studied, kind of like Lord of the Rings. That's what's really kind of more of the difference here. I felt like in Lord of the Rings they tried to give the characters some dimension, and here it's more based around the plot rather than the characters so much, I think. Even though it does kind of focus on Bilbo and how he's supposed to sort of, help the dwarves on their quest, but for the most part it is more of a plot-driven movie, especially since they're going from one place to the next, and it's just all of these little detour places and detour spots that they go to. So it is a fairly plot and adventure-driven movie, and people will probably be either satisfied with that or not, depending. But I really put it on the scale of really the first Lord of the Rings movie, how it was for me. When I came out of the first Lord of the Rings movie, I think it was the same feeling I got coming out of this movie, because it ends sort of with that to be continued kind of attitude, because again, they're gonna try to make 2 more movies out of this. And they're really trying to tease you with Smaug here. They do not want to reveal Smaug to you. And in case you don't know who Smaug is, basically he's the dragon. And the whole point of their whole quest for the Hobbit is basically to get rid of the dragon, because the dragon controls the mountain that these dwarves originally had, and he basically has all this treasure as well that the dwarf king had, and so their whole goal is just to get to that location. And then at the end you'll see, oh, there's the mountain, right at the distance, towards the end of the film. So it's almost like the first movie is sort of ending halfway, which is fairly odd, especially when you want to make 3 movies. I'm really curious as to see what Peter Jackson can pull out of it, but I really don't know what he can do, because it would just have to be all of these things incorporated in that don't really that aren't really part of the Hobbit book. So it just all depends, I think, on how you want to view what they're trying to do with it. For the most part, I think if you just take it for what it is, I think you can find it fairly enjoyable. I just wouldn't put it with fully high expectations, and thinking that somehow they're going to improve upon Lord of the Rings. I think for the most part it falls under the same bracket as it does with the other Lord of the Rings films, in that it does feel a lot like the first one. it does sort of feel a lot more like the first one, but it's a lot less character driven, I think. It's more focused in on the plot and the different stages that they go through, because I think Lord of the Rings, it had less going on at points, so it allowed for characters to kind of grow and develop. But with this one, there's, I think, a lot more stuff that gets put in right away, and kind of allows for the plot to move itself forward more than the Lord of the Rings film. So it is different, I think, when it deals with like the pacing of the plot. I think you'll probably notice that difference. But for the most part, a lot of it is fairly similar. A lot of stuff hints at the original Lord of the Rings trilogy, sort of, especially with the beginning, and especially the inclusion of Frodo in the beginning. So really, it's you're getting just a new take on something that you've already seen, pretty much. That's how it kind of is for me, and how I felt. I definitely would encourage people to just see it once, if you, and it kind of just depends if you liked Lord of the Rings. If you like the world, if you like the characters, if you like these kinds of adventures, you'll definitely enjoy it. But if you do not particularly care for these kinds of adventures, you do not particularly care for the Lord of the Rings franchise, it's really not going to win you over. So that's basically what this movie is trying to do for the most part. It's just trying to pay homage sort of to Lord of the Rings, and at the same time try to do something different, even though there's a lot of stuff that I saw that I felt was fairly similar to the Lord of the Rings series for the most part. But it's still, I think, a decent film, and was well done overall, but there still are some things in there that don't make it stand out so much, I think. I don't think this film ultimately stands out more than the other Lord of the Rings films. But that's really, I think, all I can say about The Hobbit for the most part. But yeah, this is really all you need to know as far as the updates that are going on. I mean, I'm not really changing anything else. I'm not altering anything else. And yeah, I mean, I think this will be a fairly exciting winter break. I hope everybody has a spectacular holiday season. And yeah, I'll just be reviewing my classic movie, which I will be discussing later on today and posting. But it feels great to be back and to be just talking and doing random videos. But that's what I think. That's all the things I can think of that I really wanted to address before I get started sort of with this whole 4 weeks that I have of doing videos. But until next time, everyone,